Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the new 2025 Elan Ripstick 102. I almost said that the 102 never existed before this year, but it existed in women's form.
Correct.
So, kind of an interesting tidbit there. And back in February, we did an on-snow review of the new Ripstick 96 and Ripstick 96 Black Edition. I believe we were down at Waterville for that one. And then probably a week after that, or a few days after that, we did kind of the whole collection overview. If you haven't watched that, I would encourage you to go watch that. We do talk a lot about all the construction changes and stuff like that, and just like all the different widths and the whole thing.
The whole thing, all new.
Yep. So I'm excited to talk more about this 102 in particular. This is the new 102 here. We have the previous 2024 Ripstick 106 that we can compare it to. It is kind of interesting because if you take out the previous women's ski, the 102 is basically in between the 96 and the 106, but I do feel like the 106 is the better ski to compare it to.
Yeah, if you were to ask, like, what did you replace this with, I bet Elan would say the 102.
That's a funny question, too, because the 108 is even closer to the 106. Yeah. So it doesn't, like, once you get past the 96 for width, there aren't, like, exact direct replacements for the widths.
And we don't have to label them at all.
No.
We can just say that this is
a new ski.
102.
Yep. So I know in the overview video, I mentioned that I was really excited about it and excited to talk more about it. I probably skied it more than you.
This is another one of those skis that I have more off-camera experience than on. So I do have some miles, but they're just not documented.
Yep. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but I would say this is one of those skis where you and I have had different experiences.
Correct.
So it's always pretty interesting, skis that you and I have the same experience on and skis that feel very different.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a ski that's a good example of consistency between us, maybe like Unleashed 98.
Unleashed 98, that was the one that I was thinking of for sure.
Yeah, where like skier weight doesn't play a huge difference. It basically is the ski.
Yep.
And I think this is a slightly different story, and I think that has always been true with Ripsticks.
Yeah.
So it's probably not terribly surprising.
Yeah, and I would say that it is probably more exaggerated now with the new constructions.
I think so too. Yeah. So speaking of that new construction, although we did talk about it in that overview video, do you want to run us through what's going on in this new ski?
A lot of similar concepts carry forward. It's not like they tore this thing to the ground and then started new, but there are definitely some tweaks and updates that make this unique in its own. Tube light wood core carries forward. That is a blend of poplar and paulownia, lighter weight woods, a little bit more flexible. And then they do put their carbon tubes in here. When they mill out that wood and put the carbon tubes in, they do it along the curvature of the sidewall, so they're pre-bending those tubes. So not only is it a 360-degree application of carbon in that circular cylindrical format, but it's also placed in the ski under pressure, so there's already energy built in. And when we talk about how these Ripstick skis get their amazing energy, it's the tubes.
Yep.
Like, how can such a light ski be so poppy and zesty and energetic? And it's all about that 360-degree application of carbon. There are some differences. They did bring the length of the tubes down a little bit shorter. That's because they included two strips, full length of unidirectional carbon running below the core, as opposed to carbon line, which ran above the core in the previous Ripstick version. So carbon on the bottom, and what that does is it keeps the responsiveness right near the snow and also lowers the vibrations, kind of the noise,
good point.
if you will. So there's insulation between the carbon and your feet in the wood core. But when they did that, they did have to make a thinner core profile. So not only are the edges a little bit beveled, but if you put it up against this previous 106, there is certainly a difference in the thickness of core profile, and that comes through in the flex. So we'll get to that in a minute, but there is a thinner core profile here, leading to an overall lighter weight and a little bit more flexible of a nature. I've always questioned why they always put vapor tips in these skis. So kind of milled out a section in the forebody.
Not just philosophically, literally, you've asked them, why do you put vapor tips?
Right. And they've always been staunch defenders of their vapor tips, and I get it. You know, it's an elastomer material that's used to reduce vibrations and chatter, and I guess I was more specifically wondering why it was in the black editions of the skis.
Yep.
So we actually don't have vapor tips in these skis anymore, but we do get a flax layer, kind of where that vapor tips, where they went.
So you're saying that you were right? Oh.
No.
I'm not saying that either.
No. I kind of, given my experience with this versus a 106, I kind of missed the vapor tips, to be honest.
Not as cut and dry, not as black and white as you thought it might be.
No. But it is full wood with the flax on top, so they're not removing wood to put in an additional material.
Yep.
So there is just an additive material as opposed to removing and then replacing with elastomer. But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the construction. The carbon tubes and then the unidirectional carbon form what's called their carbon deck technology. So if you hear that term thrown around, that's what that means.
It's just all the carbon.
It's all the carbon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of put the flax in there as well as being
into the
part of
carbon
that.
deck.
Yeah. That's what I was told.
Fair enough. Do you want to talk about flex pattern?
Yeah. The shovels are very flexible.
Yeah.
That's the overarching theme, is that we just get a really dramatic bend
Super
in
bendy.
the shovel here.
Yeah.
And then as that profile gets thicker through the mid body, we do see it start to stiffen up a little bit.
Yeah. Pretty stiff, like through this midsection
Yeah,
of the ski.
midsection and the tails feel a lot more like this outgoing 106, but when you're looking at the shovel, this 106 is considerably stiffer.
Well, it's kind of funny. Like, I never really, in my mind, I never thought of the Ripstick 106 as a stiff ski.
Right.
It doesn't feel that way when you ski it, I don't think. And I still don't think it's a stiff ski, but it's certainly stiffer than the new 102.
Right.
And I'd say that's consistent across the board with all new Ripsticks, is they're softer in the shovel.
You do see a drastic decrease in stiffness through the shovels.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, depending on how you like to ski and your application and the snow conditions and all that stuff.
Yep.
I know you had them on the scale before we started filming, and I believe we found that this new ski, obviously we're not exactly the same for width or length here, but the new ski is about 100 grams lighter. You were at 1780,
Yep.
and I'm at 1880. So still very, very lightweight. If anything, lighter.
Yeah, and then even you were mentioning the differences in width. Let's also look at the differences in length. We've always noted that these older Ripsticks always measured about 1.5 centimeters short of their stated. So if you run a tape on this 180, it usually comes out to about 178.5. They are now back to true sizing with the new Ripsticks all throughout their models. So this 182 is a 182. If you can tell here, it looks like it's like 3 to 4 centimeters taller.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Than the 180. So even though it states 2, it looks a little bit longer. So they're kind of, I would say, correcting their lengths a little bit.
Yeah,
they also shorten the gap. So used to go 180, 188. So every 8, and now we're 7. So 182, 189, and then down from there.
Yep.
So a couple of interesting just changes in terms of the sizing.
Yeah, and I suppose that already started the shape conversation.
Yeah.
I would say beyond that, they're, more similar than different. Obviously, there's a slight change in dimensions. So compared to this 106, this ski was 143, 106, 120. What do you got on the new ski?
138, 102, 118.
Yeah, so a bigger change in tip dimensions than tail dimensions, which is kind of interesting.
Yep.
But overall, pretty similar. My turn radius is 18.1. In this ski, it's 18.8. And then, can you hand me that other one over there?
New one here?
Yeah. I'm not even going to try and compare on screen here because it's so subtle that I don't think it would come across. But the tip rocker is slightly longer and slightly lower on this new 102 compared to the 106. Would you agree?
Yeah, and when we had them on the wall and you look, you can see the splay, the bend of the 106 coming out from the wall a little bit more. So the 102 is closer to flat
Yep.
than the 106.
Yep. There's less tail rocker, interestingly, on this new 102. And there's pretty significantly higher camber height.
Yeah.
So again, if you put them back to back, it's pretty subtle. Like we had to spend a good amount of time kind of discerning the differences between them, but those differences definitely exist, and the higher camber height makes a lot of sense given the flex pattern. You know, a softer flexing ski having a little bit more camber gives you more kind of, or almost equates to how much you can push against it. I think having more tip rocker with the softer flex in the tip is the most interesting difference.
Yeah, I agree. And it really kind of affects how the ski initiates a turn.
Yeah.
Like that's a main difference in snow feel with this 102 versus any of the existing Ripsticks.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a great segue into performance. And although I don't like doing it this way, I feel like it's a good way to describe the ski. Let's start with on-piste feel. And you can start with your opinion, and then I'll give mine because I know those things are different.
Yeah, I struggled with that initiation phase because it was so easy, I guess, for me and my weight and style.
To bend.
You had mentioned the style of skier plays a big role as well as the weight. And so for someone like me with a little bit more of a traditional style, weighting the tips of the ski, kind of pressuring the tip to get my initiation, it was pretty easy for me to bend right through the front of the ski.
Yep, and you could see it.
Yeah.
Like watching you ski them.
Yeah.
I would notice your outside ski wandering a little bit because you were just kind of pushing through the shovel.
Yeah, and that's really specific to firm snow. Like we definitely had more of our on-piste testing done on firm snow from a carving perspective. So, you know, there is that. Anytime it got a little bit softer, really you just have to focus, me specifically, to not really push past the front third of the ski. To ski it more centrally and kind of adhering to the ski's free ride personality. Because these are, you know, they have the Wingman series for their, I mean, that's even in their all mountain category, what we might consider them to be more front side. So they have that. They have the Wingman. They have the prime time carvers.
Right.
So these Ripsticks are most certainly in Elan's free ride realm. And when you're thinking about a free ride ski that's shaped and built in this way, you're not supposed to drive the tips of the ski into firm snow.
Right.
Like that's not what it's supposed to do.
Right.
So you got to kind of think about that when you're considering a ski like this, where you know, there are other 102s. A Mantra 102 came up as a good foil for this ski, where if you tried to do some of the stuff that you do on a Ripstick 102 on trail, throwing it sideways on a groomer on a Mantra 102,
break your leg.
Yeah, you're going to notice it.
Yeah.
So there are those differences.
Yeah, you talked about it being a more directional scope.
Right.
And I thought that was a pretty good comparison. We also talked about last week Blaze.
Yep.
But that ski's stiffer.
Yeah.
So I feel like for somebody your size, there's maybe more limitations here, but
for on trail.
Limitation might kind of feels like the wrong word, I guess. It's just a different animal.
Yeah, and but once you get it into slightly softer groomers, you know, if it's fresh corduroy from a softer night or later in the day when it's chopped up, you don't deal with that nearly as much.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty specific to early firm snow or very smooth firm snow.
Well, and if you've got the right snow conditions, plus a lighter weight skier, plus somebody who skis with more of a like centered,
Yep.
more balanced weighting, then it's fantastic. So it is really interesting because there are huge differences in how you and I ski, but like, I basically don't find any limitation for it on firm snow on a groomer. It's just incredible. I mean, I haven't shied away from my opinions and statements about skis in this width range with soft flex patterns. Like I know in the kind of overview article I talked about the K2 Reckoner 102, which is interesting because after that video, I spent a ton of time on a K2 Reckoner 102. Like I skied it a lot this year. This is stiff compared to a Reckoner 102.
Yeah.
I also skied the Playmaker 101 a lot. Like I love that ski. And for me, with that kind of background and that preference and how I like to ski and how I spend my time, thing absolutely rips turns. It's so much fun. And like the limitation that you find in the soft flex pattern in the shovel, for me is a benefit.
Yeah.
Because it's already like bent, or it's not already bent, but it's so easy just to engage and have the ski just start a carve, and then I'm mostly waiting kind of middle section of the ski, and we looked at how much stiffer it is through that middle section of the ski. So it's super fun. And then like the same kind of ripstick phenomenon that I've always really enjoyed comes up as well, because I can ski it, I can carve and I can make round turns and it has enough torsional stiffness, but then like edge release is off the charts. Like I almost forget that I'm not on a twin tip sometimes.
Yeah.
And I start to like do things as if I was skiing a twin tip, but with better directional performance. So they're super fun for me. And I just think, it's not a new conversation with ripsticks at all. Like there are going to be different experiences for different skiers depending on weight and level of aggressiveness and how you're weighting and what you're used to and all that stuff. Like if you've been skiing mantras your whole life and you go to a ripstick, you're going to have a very different experience than somebody who's been skiing lighter weight, soft flexing twin tips their whole life and then goes to a ripstick.
Right.
So it's just interesting how those things happen. I do think that I feel like we both were kind of shocked in like initial testing on this ski of how strong it was overall.
Yeah.
And like I think it's fair to say that this doesn't have the same strength. So maybe there's more of a cutoff for skier weight. I'm not sure, but it is different.
It is different.
Yeah. But I feel like this is a good time to transition to off-piste performance.
Yeah.
I would say when you start bringing up like arguably the true intention of the ski, this is a better ski for more people than Ripstick 106. Like if you're skiing trees, if you're skiing bumps, if you're skiing soft snow, this shape and flex pattern and weight and everything, it's like a dream come true for tons of skiers.
Yeah, and I had a very different experience in that situation.
Well, I would say that our experiences off-piste are probably just about exactly the same.
Yeah, and they're definitely more in line with what Elan is looking for from a Ripstick 102.
Yeah. So like it's fun to start with the on-piste conversation because it's easy to speak to the way that the ski reacts with the snow surface.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this ski in particular, when you start talking about its true intention, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So I had two notable experiences that I want to share. The first is a Friday afternoon. Our kids get to do a Friday program where they ski in the afternoon with their friends at the mountain, which is a great program. And then I would go up and kind of pick them up at 3 o'clock and ski for another hour with them.
Yeah.
And this was in my truck and went up one day, met up with the kids and started skiing. If you've ever been to Stowe, under the new six-pack is a trail called Hackett's Highway, which is like every kid's favorite trail.
It's also my favorite trail, which maybe that says something about me as a skier.
But there's just a whole kind of situation of drops and rollers and rocks and stumps and roots.
Tons of features.
Yeah, lots of features.
Yeah.
You know, there's moguls, there's riverbeds. I mean, it's really just an adventure.
Yeah.
It's a true classic
East Coast skiing adventure. Yep.
And on this particular day, there had been some melts throughout the day. And so we're riding up the 6-pack over the trail, and the kids are like, let's do this. We've been doing it all day. And I'm like, I see a lot of rocks and stumps.
Sure.
But sure, I'm up for it.
Yep.
And I couldn't think of a much better option to be on that trail that day than this ski.
Yep.
Like the way that it maneuvers through tighter areas, it goes exactly where you want it. It's under 1,800 grams, so it's going to be super light, so agile. And when you are going towards an object and need to make a quick turn, I would 1,000% rather be on a Ripstick 102 than a Mantra 102.
Yeah.
You know, you just need that type of behavior and character to make the ski do what you want. And then, you know, after that run, I decided that since they weren't my skis, I wasn't going to push it. But
that's
really,
fair.
it's a fantastic Hackett's Highway ski. If you've ever been in snow and skied Hackett's, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I mean we've been talking about Ripstick 106 and how good it is in tight trees forever.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that it continues to be really, really good in that scenario. I would just say it's better.
Yeah.
Like I think the change in the flex pattern, being a tiny bit lighter, it just enhances like all of the things that it's been really good at forever. Our chute, our nosedive S-turns chute that we like to joke about by calling it a chute.
A couloir.
Couloir, sorry.
Yeah.
That's even more of a stretch. But I think we like posted a clip earlier this week or last week of me skiing that section, and somebody was like, well, you're washing out your tails. And I think I responded to their comment and was like, yeah, because if you didn't, you would hit all those trees down there.
Right.
And like that scenario or that situation, terrain like that and a situation like that it's just where this ski really, really shines. Is like you said, if you're skiing towards an object that you don't want to hit, Ripstick 102 is one of the best skis out there for getting around that object. And like the edge release is so easy. It feels really consistent and smooth when you're making skidded turns. Like some skis have so much reactivity that they're like a little nervous. You know, you have to be like ready for when the ski is going to come back and go into the next turn.
Yeah.
This ski, I feel like you have 100% control, and it feels incredibly intuitive in just how the ski reacts with the snow surface. I also think this is a little unfair, but I skied the 108 in some really soft snow, and I think it's true. Like I've skied the 102 in soft snow as well, and we actually have some footage from a couple ski testers at our ski test that were skiing it. They increased float, like kind of regardless of width. So that even takes it even further. Just as an off-piste freeride ski, it is better basically across the board. I would say the one scenario where it's not just better than the ski it replaces off-piste is if you're bob size and you're skiing really fast.
Yeah.
But there's footage of me skiing like refrozen sort of bumpy hayride, and I remember doing that because it was like the only reason I did it was to test that like the upper limit of its stability, and I was blown away. So then it's another skier weight thing.
Yeah.
Where for me, when you're skiing over bumpy terrain, this soft flex pattern basically acts like suspension. And we've talked about the vibration damping of carbon tubes a ton over the past, 4 years. So it's like suspension plus vibration damping for someone my weight, but then when you take it to your weight, it's like you're pushing through too much, or the ski might just start moving around too much.
Yeah, and I want to reserve full judgment until I ski the 189.
Sure, yeah.
for that type of thing,
Yeah.
but on the 182 specifically, I had
it
a
makes
hard
a lot of
time
sense.
with that firm, chattery stuff.
Yeah, and very interesting, the breakdown in lengths now. Like, it it's cool to see it measure correctly now, but it feels more agile than a 182 for me. Like if just skiing it, if you were to put like masking tape over the length and then ask me what length that was on, I probably would have guessed like 177, 178.
Yeah.
Because it's so light and so agile that it does kind of ski a little bit short, but it's mostly in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, just another great tree skiing soft snow option.
Yeah.
That is just highly maneuverable.
And it's
so easy and so fun.
The other thing that I think Elan accomplished here, which again has always been true, and this has always been a like conversation topic with Ripsticks, is perfectly appropriate for an intermediate.
Yeah.
And if anything, they like shifted it further in that direction, I think. So a couple people that ski that our ski test aren't like the world's best skiers, and they did really well on it, and we got really positive feedback on it. I think you're a good example of like where some limitations might fall for an expert.
Yeah.
But if they shifted it slightly more towards intermediate, and again, I still truly feel like it's intermediate to expert, because I suppose I like to consider myself an expert skier.
You're an expert and you like to ski.
I really like
sure.
it. So yeah, like it does still have that range. So if they did shift it, I don't think that's a bad thing, especially because how many skis exist on the top end of that? Like Enforcer 104. Here, take your Enforcer 104 and go be a big, strong, powerful expert skier.
Quit complaining about flexible skis.
Right, exactly. Like there's so many choices for that skier. So I think it's cool that they're owning their spot in the market.
Yeah.
And like really kind of doubling down on it.
Yeah, like I don't think they shifted it. I think they expanded
it. Yeah. And then there's the Ripstick 102 Black Edition.
Yep.
So if you do, if you're worried about the top end of that, like if there is a skier weight limitation or a level of aggressiveness limitation, go buy a Black Edition, and you still get an increase in performance. You and I were talking about it. Like I would say there used to be more of a stark contrast between Ripstick normal and Ripstick Black Edition. And I think they're probably closer in performance now, but you still get an uptick.
Yeah, I didn't find as drastic a difference between 102 and 102 Black Edition as
106.
96 or 106 and their counterparts.
I mean, 106 Black Edition is a beast.
Yeah.
Like, it's not tremendously hard to ski because it's still lighter than most, but it's not like easy.
Right.
Where I feel like Ripstick 102 Black Edition I actually think is very easy to ski.
Yeah.
So.
A conversation for another time, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would like to, we did that on snow review for 96 and 96 Black Edition. I think it'd be great to get a 189, get a 182 and a 189 102 Black Edition, and maybe grab someone like Matt Stromecki and go do another on snow review. Really put it through its paces.
I'm in.
Probably won't be early season unless we had an early season like last year.
Right. You never know.
Skiing powder and Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So I feel like that's enough. I feel like that tells the story of the Ripstick 102.
Yeah, something that like we both had a lot of fun on and just kind of noticed some interesting aspects of it that make it unique.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those skis where it felt like they made it for me.
Right.
Part of the reason why I felt like they made it for me is because I wore a blue outfit a lot of the season. And I was like, hey, cool, a blue Ripstick. Like, this looks like it should be for me. And then, like, just skiing it works so well for me. And then I remember that they make the Playmaker 101, and that's actually the ski that's for me.
I also think it's interesting that we can have this exact opposite conversation when we talk about a Headcore 99.
It's 100% opposite.
We could just
trade
switch places and put the ski here and have the same conversation.
But opposite.
Yeah. So I think that just speaks to the level of overall differences in skis and skier experience out there on the market today.
Look at the difference in camber.
Yeah, well, it needs to be there. It's like we talked about with scope.
Fascinating.
It has so much camber, but it has to because of its flex.
Yeah. Which for me is really fun.
Yeah.
Because I'm using more of that flex.
Right.
Not pushing through it. So, yeah, that was really fun. Let us know if you have any Ripstick 102 questions. We still haven't talked about the 88 or the 108. At least not in a in-depth format, so.
Two of my favorite Ripsticks.
The 88 and the 108?
Yeah.
I love the 108. I mean, they're both really fun too. So we'll try and work those in the future. In the meantime, let us know if you have any 102 questions, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.